Hello, everyone. I'm honored to be standing here today. I am Corinna, and I wanted to take the time to introduce myself. I am a woman, and I am deaf, and among many other things, I also wanted to throw out a dirty P word that I am, which is a pacifist. And that sometimes makes my stomach churn, that word, but I'll really discuss and explain what that means later. Pacifism itself is not really my point. I want to talk more about war. And also, I wanted to warn you that I'm just going to fingerspell the sign for pacifism. I'm going to fingerspell. So, we think of soldiers, ones we loved, buried. Every American thinks about this, and on national TV, we often see things related to the war and honoring our heroes and our military. The flag waving in the wind. And we might read an article returning back home and meeting their dog for the first time in a long time. And this really creates war as a feeling of being rooted in our society. From the time we're a child to growing up, we look up to heroes of war. And war and pacifism were difficult for me to be able to separate in my head. Or to be able to have them coincide with each other. It was difficult for me to be able to say that you could be both, but it's true. You can be a pacifist and you can be a patriot as well. And I want you all to do me one simple favor. I want you to think about what's the first thing that comes to your mind when I use the word pacifist. What's the first thing you think of? Just think to yourselves. Now, I want to typically when I ask the exact same question, I asked students from this campus, and they said an answer that I got over and over again was Quaker. Another one was a hippie, someone weird, and that came with a facial expression, someone weird. So nowadays, pacifism doesn't fit the mold of what they just threw out. I'm not a hippie. I might be a little weird, I'll admit that. But the first two, the Quaker and the hippie, didn't really match me, so where does that leave us? On top of that, with technology and the internet nowadays, you might see different, if you Google pacifism, various things might come up. It might mean someone who's nutty, so it implies a bad thing. Might have a picture of someone crying, someone who is fearful, and that's just kind of the image that pops up online. So it took me a long time to be able to personally examine myself before I could identify myself as a pacifist. And so why was I so emotional about this? Because I am a pacifist, but I felt like I had to talk myself into it, like, okay, you can do it, but why was I so afraid to admit that? I had taken time to ask other pacifists what their thoughts were, and I discussed, and we found out that many pacifists nowadays are having a hard time being able to admit to people that they are pacifists because of the reactions that they get. I have friends who serve in the military, and I remember telling this person that I'm a pacifist, and they said, "Oh my gosh, are you betraying me? I'm in the military." And I was like, okay, I never thought about that. So how people react really shows what they think of when they think of pacifism. And so people think that it's a problem, and it is nowadays, because people are afraid to be able to unite together and say, yeah, I'm a pacifist. We need to be open with ourselves and with each other. A common reaction we get when we tell people, not all pacifists have gotten this, but some people have gotten the response of, after they tell someone they're a pacifist, they say, "Oh, so you're against the government?" Or, so do you're slapping soldiers in the face when you say that, or why do you hate America? And so those are some of the common responses that pacifists get, but those things aren't true, so many people fall for that. I identify as a pacifist, and so do many others, but that means we don't support war, but some people think that means that we doubt ourselves. There are so many pacifists today that are afraid to identify ourselves as such, but I am a pacifist because I love my country, and because I couldn't stand to watch my country waste thousands of dollars, kill thousands of people, and I just couldn't stand for that. And so I was thinking I could make the argument that oftentimes people assume that pacifism itself isn't patriotism, but really, you could argue that pacifism is hardcore patriotism because you're standing for your country. In a pacifist world, there's a variety of beliefs. We have different philosophies, different values, and some pacifists do support war. They support the concept of just war. And some think it's only relating to religion or moral values. You know how we talk about different languages, different cultures, all in one world, but we are still united as pacifists. And we want individual perspectives based on everyone to be able to be valid. As a pacifist, doing this presentation, this is only my perspective. I can't claim to speak for all of them, but only for myself today. I wanted to talk with all of you. Why? Because it's time that we call for a new label on what pacifism looks like. Find the perfect solution today? Absolutely not. I'm not going to find a perfect solution, but I stand in front of you with a desire to spark a debate about our military, our budget, about how we don't provide enough resources for our soldiers. Sometimes that is pacifism, and that's my goal today. So a lot of you, when you think of the word pacifism, envision a variety of things that behind the root of them is from the 1960s movement of ideological principles, the concept of how world peace looked like years and years and years ago. But my generation, now that it's a more advanced technological age, we don't fit that 1960s mold. We don't fit their philosophy anymore. We'd like to see things happening now, but we're less, growing our hair out and rebelling against the government. We don't care so much about wearing flower braids in our hair. We want action now, not just world peace. We want action now. We focus on human diversity and social justice. Society is based on this mold that pacifism must meet this particular mold set from the 1960s. And today, not many people that are pacifists are actually like that. So making that transition has been very hard because we still need to abide by that mold that was created for us long ago, and there's this internal conflict of what it means to be a pacifist. I don't believe that world peace is possible for our human race. I'm just saying, it's nice to envision that, but I don't think it's possible. An example of a struggle that we have today that pacifists face because of assumptions, I really just want to personally thank all of you that have blazed the trail and paved the way for me to be able to stand here on this stage. I just want to thank and honor you because it is time that we made a new path, that we stop staying on this one that our ancestors carved for us, but we blaze a new one. So today, in our military technology, it's so advanced and ever increasing. There's nuclear warfare, and war is changing in and of itself. Countries have access to nuclear technology, and that should concern us. It is a very real possibility. I still have that envision from the history movies of people standing on the battlefield and yelling "charge" and running toward each other, but that's really not what war looks like anymore. It has evolved. It's more like soldiers using night vision goggles and digging through tunnels on the enemy lines, and war has changed so much over time. It's evolved. So why would pacifism not evolve with it? There's a call for a new movement, and we need to change pacifism as well. Not only in the USA, we feel like we have the largest military, the biggest budget. We should be the top military, right? So give us that status, give us that power, right? But that can come with negatives as well. If we continue to increase our military technology and become the top, figure out all these strategies, can't that be exhausting? Can't that be dangerous? We are at the top, and other countries are going to want to take us down from the top. So my suggestion today, rather than investing all this money and staying at the top, why don't we just let someone else do it? I want to throw out something. In America, we are advancing, and I have compassion to other nations sometimes. Because sometimes when we enter war, we're conflicting with ourselves. We throw out our American values, and compassion on the battlefield is lost. What I'm really trying to say is that you should consider this presentation my battle cry. Us pacifists need to rally ourselves to band together, and our country cannot continue to pay for this and go down this slope. And I could talk to you all night about the negatives of war. I could. About soldiers coming back home and being disappointed, and there was a study that said that a very high percentage of soldiers that came back from the war were not happy, were not content, and we spend so much time focusing on the war and investing into that rather than our soldiers. And this can cause serious environmental damage and pain and suffering. We invest so much into we should invest things better, not into war, instead of needing to borrow money from other places to be able to support our own soldiers. Our military has better technology than our classrooms. One wise person once told me that we have a Department of Defense, but not a Department of Peace. And that's the reason I feel that there needs to be a new call for pacifism. And that push will allow us to start discussing. And when we start talking about ourselves, we start budgeting, and we start considering what is happening in other countries. We start talking about how to provide better resources for returning soldiers. And that's all I want to say. I don't have a perfect solution. I stand in front of you all with the desire to start a discussion. And I believe that as Americans, we all have an obligation to start this discussion. I love my country, and I love peace, and I want both. So I want you all to do one favor for me. Most people give credit for this quote to one particular guy, but he says war is not deciding what's right, only what is left. Thank you.